The Treaty of Versailles, a major 20th century turning point, changed world history by ending World War I and was a contributing factor to the onset of World War II. World War I changed the lives of everyone that was involved. During my trip to Paris, I went on a day trip to the Palace of Versailles. I was able to see the Hall of Mirrors where the peace treaty was signed. I also found a new respect for my great-uncle Elmer Wright from Plympton, Massachusetts, who served in World War I. In 1917, after the Germans torpedoed ships in the Atlantic, President Wilson asked Congress to declare war on Germany. Britain, France, Russia, and Italy were already involved in the war. All of these countries suffered great losses due to the fact that the war was fought on their land. In November 1918, the German armistice stopped the hostilities between the Allies and the Germans. It was the first hope of peace for the end of World War I. On December 29, 1918, Elmer Wright wrote to his parents telling them that President Wilson, President Poincaré, Marshal Foch, Marshal Joffre, General Pershing, and Secretary Lansing had arrived in Paris. He said, quote, "I saw the president when he arrived in Paris, and he sure got some reception. We had a half day off and were carried in trucks down to the Bois de Boulogne, which is the street near the station where he arrived. As far as the eye could reach, the streets were lined with French troops, and in back of them were thousands of Parisians. In front of where we stood were the famous chasseurs alpins, the most famous fighters of the French armies. There were some of them came to Devens, you know, when we were there. It was a sight I will probably never see again in my life. In the first carriage was President Wilson and President Poincaré. After him came Marshal Foch and Marshal Joffre, and then General Pershing. Secretary Lansing was also in one carriage." End of quote. President Wilson and the others had come to Paris to meet as a group known as the Council of Ten. This group met to decide the terms of the peace treaty with Germany. The group consisted of 2 representatives from Britain, France, Italy, Japan, and the United States. A few months later, in March 1919, this group was replaced by the Council of Four. The Council of Four consisted of Lloyd George from Britain, George Clemenceau from France, Woodrow Wilson from the United States, and Vittorio Orlando from Italy. Later this group was replaced by the Big Three, which had the same representatives, excluding Italy. The members of the council went into the peace conferences with different opinions about what should be included and edited from the treaty. President Wilson wanted the treaty to include his 14 points and create a League of Nations. Later this idea and the treaty itself were rejected by the United States Senate. The United States never joined the League of Nations. This destroyed Wilson's plan for the League to be the cornerstone for worldwide collective security. Clemenceau wanted security for France and wanted the Germans to pay the Allies reparations. Lloyd George wanted to make sure that by the end of the conference, Britain had secure naval and colonial assets at Germany's expense. The peace treaty also covered matters about self-determination, the idea that national groups should have their own government. For example, Germany's new borders, as set by the treaty, placed many German-speaking people under the rule of other countries. Italy, Romania, and Greece had been made promises by the Big Three that were not kept. These issues made tensions higher in the conferences. The treaty also made new countries such as Czechoslovakia, Poland, Yugoslavia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland. As a result of being on the losing side of the war, Turkey had its empire greatly reduced. Germany suffered great losses from the peace treaty's terms. Germany lost 13% of its territory and was split by the Polish corridor. With the loss of land, Germany also lost 10% of its natural resources. The treaty didn't settle the total amount of reparations due until 1921. The treaty also contained a war guilt clause that put full responsibility for the war on Germany. All the German colonies were distributed to the Allied countries. Germany had been defeated but remained strong, restoring the balance of power among European nations. Hitler, in the post-war period, exploited these terms of the settlement to gain prominence in Germany. He encouraged a feeling of nationalism and a desire among the German people to regain the land they had lost. This helped the Nazis achieve political power, setting the stage for World War II. After reading the finished treaty, the French General Marshal Foch thought that there might be another war. He said, "This is not peace, it is an armistice for 20 years. World War II began exactly 20 years after he said this. Not only did political boundaries and leaders suffer, but the soldiers that contributed their time and energy had their lives changed forever. People like my great-uncle Elmer enlisted in the army unprepared for the upcoming horrific events they would encounter. He expresses this in one of his letters home. Quote, "Near a place called Belleau Woods, about 90 kilometers from Paris, is a woods, or rather it was a woods once, called Belleau Woods. It was here that the boys of our own 26th Division, aided by the Marines and French, turned the tide that ended in victory. I wish you could visit that place. There is not a tree or a bush that is not cut off or gashed by bullet or shell, and although the fight occurred almost a year ago, there are still laying around unexploded shells, parts of American and German uniforms, all of which tells a story better than words what a terrific fight was put up there. I hope that fortune will favor you so that sometime you can come over here and see this Gettysburg of France, and the words that Lincoln spoke at Gettysburg are never more forcible than when applied to Belleau Woods. I think that most of us have learned something for being over here. If nothing more, it has shown me the results of war upon a nation. History shows us the results, but we have seen with our own eyes that no matter how high a nation may rise in development and education, a big war will ruin it forever, and it is the duty of man who has been over here in the American Expeditionary Forces to try to keep America from going down the same way as all the other great nations have gone since the world began." End quote.